Hi and welcome back. In this video we're going to be creating our first HTML form, which is going to allow our users to create new posts in our in-memory database. In order to do that, we're going to create two new Flask endpoints. Let's go over down here and create the first one, which is going to be very simple. It's going to give the users the form that they can fill in. So we're going to do app.route/post/form. And then here we're going to define a function that is going to return render template of create.jinja2. This is going to be a file that we're going to give our users, which is going to contain the fields that they can fill in order to create a new post. Let's go and do this first. We always want to go step by step when we do software development. We want to do this, make sure it works, and then we can move on to the next bit. If you implement everything together and then try to see if it works, you may find that it's not so easy to realize where the problem lies. So going step by step, always a good idea. Let's go ahead into our templates, create a new file, which is going to be called create.jinja2. And in here, we're going to do the usual extends base.jinja2. And then a block of content there. And inside this block, we're going to put our form. The first thing is a wee title, just so the user knows where they are. Then we're going to include our form. Okay. And inside a form, we're going to include a div. A div in HTML is just a horizontal block. So if you have two divs, for example, this one here, and then this one here, they will appear one below the other, as opposed to one beside the other. So it's a good way of separating content in HTML. It doesn't really do anything on its own, but it's a good way of separating content. And the content we're going to separate is the different fields. First thing we're going to do is add a label, and the label is going to be for this title field. And the title field is going to be here, input, type, text, and the name is going to be title. Notice how the label has an opening tag and a closing tag, and inside it you put what you want to go in the label. But the input field doesn't have anything inside it because it's a blank field, so you get what's called a self-closing tag. You get a tag that has this weird syntax where it's only a single tag, but it has this / at the end. This is called a self-closing tag, a tag that closes itself. The name of the field is what this for is going to target. So this tells HTML users that this label is for this field. Of course, when you see the text title beside a field, you know that that title is for that field. But if you're blind and you're using a screen reader, you may not see the contents of the label, but the screen reader will be able to look at this for property and tell you that this input field is a title. So it's always a good idea to have these fors. They're for screen readers, not for the rest of us, but it's a good idea nonetheless. Then in the other div, we're going to include a field for the contents of the post. So we're going to do label for content, like that. And then instead of an input type text, which is a single line text field, we're going to use a text area. A text area is just a multi-line field, like that. And a text area does have to close like that. It shouldn't be a self-closing tag. This is just another type of input which can span multiple lines. And finally, we're going to include a final div, which is going to be an input of type submit. An input of type submit essentially is a button that the user can press. And when the user presses the button, they're going to send the data of the form to the server. Now that we've got this, let's go over to our app, run it, and see what happens when we access this endpoint. Let's go over to Chrome and access post/form, and you get this nice looking form. Okay, I'll give you that. It's not terribly pretty, but nonetheless, it is functional. you can put in your title here, like my first blog post, and the content can be, hello, how are you doing? Then you can submit, and now look at what happens to the URL. The URL has changed, right? Now it has all of this stuff here. But it seemed like it loaded something. Now the fields are blank, but the URL has changed. So how to explain this? Well, what's happening is the form is sending the data to a page. That page can then choose to use that data or not. What happens is when you press submit, the browser sends another GET request to this URL, /post/form, and it includes behind that this that is called a query string parameter. Okay, this question mark title equals something and content equals something else. But because our Python code here, when you access this endpoint, only renders a template, it doesn't use the data that it received in the query string parameters, it is unable to do anything with them, and all that happens is we re-render the template and we don't use that data at all. We're going to stop the app again because we're going to restart it momentarily, but what we're going to do is instead of sending the data to this endpoint, we're going to send the data to a different endpoint. So here in the form, we're going to say action equals /post/create. Okay? Instead of /post/form, now it's going to go into /post/create. And we can create that endpoint. App route /post/create. Create post. And this, I'm actually just going to call it create just to keep it simple. This is going to access that data that's coming through the URL. Remember, this here is 107.15000 /post/create question mark title equal blah blah and content equal something else. Yeah? We can access this stuff here. We can retrieve the title and the content. So let's do just that. Inside our create function, we're going to say title is request.args.get title. And we have to import request from Flask. So let's go to the very top and say import request. This request thing here, it's a variable, it's like a global variable, is the request that is coming into this endpoint. So the request right now is this, and it has some arguments, which are these. And you can get a particular argument in order to retrieve its content. Essentially, Flask behind the scenes, it's turning this into a dictionary, and that's request.args. Then you can get a particular thing in that dictionary, and we'll give you the content of that. Similarly, we can do content equal request.args.get content. Then we can generate a new post ID, which is going to be len of posts. And finally, we can say posts post ID equal title is going to be the title and content is going to be the content. Like that. Now is a good point in time to make sure to also include an ID for the post in the body of the post. Like that. Just so when you access a particular post, you'll also have access to its ID. It's a useful thing to include in every post. So we're going to go up here and also include that here. Okay, just a good thing to include in order to have the complete information when you do retrieve a post. Now that we've added this new post to our posts, we can return the user something else. So again, all this does is it accesses these arguments using request.args and gets a title and the content that came from the form, generates a new post ID, and then puts it into our dictionary. For example, if we create a new post and pass it some values here, len of posts will be 1 because we've got one post right now. And what we'll do is we'll say posts1 equal this new post. And at the end, we're going to say return. And here's a bit more complicated redirect URL4 post ID equal post ID. So a couple of things are going on here. The first thing is this URL4. The URL4, which we're going to import in just a moment, URL4 takes in a function name. Takes in the function name and returns a URL, an address that we want. In this case, it takes the post function name, which is this function defined up here, and it's going to give us this URL. Instead of hard coding the URL in here directly, we can use the URL4, and that way we can change this later on if we want. For example, let's say we want to change it to, I don't know, posts / something. This will still work because we've not changed the function name. So Flask recommends using this URL4 in order to generate URLs instead of hard coding them. And it also allows us to give the arguments that it needs. So the post URL needs a post ID in order to be complete, and we can do that inside the URL4 function. The redirect is wrapping this URL4, and what it does is it sends a response back to the browser, telling the browser that it should actually not load this page. It should go and load this page instead. So essentially the browser loads this, and then it receives this information, and then it goes and loads the other thing. Browsers are already wired up to understand this, and so that's why it works. You can send the browser to go to somewhere else and they'll do it. Okay, let's go up and import those two. We want to import URL4 and redirect. And now when we create a new post, we pass it in the title and content, we add it to our database, and then we send the user to the post page for that specific post. So as soon as you create a post, you'll be sent back to the post page that you've just created. Let's go and run our app and try this out. So what we're going to do is we are going to delete this query string parameter. We're going to refresh this page, and now we're going to enter something here. My first blog post, and hey, what are you reading? And then submit, and as soon as submit happens, you know what's going to happen. The URL is going to change. We're going to send a request to /post/create. That's going to process this function here, add something to our database, and then it's going to redirect us to /post/1. Let's press submit, and there you have it. And it happens so quickly you can't even see it because there's really nothing much happening in the background. But this has now been added to our database. You can see we're in /post/1, and our new post contents have appeared here. So this is starting to get really cool. Now we can get information from our users, add it to a database, send them to other places, display information, and so forth. I hope you're starting to see the power of what Flask can do. I really love Flask, and I'm really passionate about developing Flask applications because it's so simple and it's all Python. All that's happening here is this. This is what Flask gives you, really. This routing, access to the request, rendering templates. The rest, databases, all your business logic in terms of creating new posts and so forth, is all Python. And that gives you a lot of flexibility. There are other web frameworks apart from Flask that can be a bit more complex to use, such as Django. They require a bit more upfront knowledge, but Flask does not. That's why I'm really liking how Flask works. And this is what I do at my job and in many other courses as well. So this was the end of the video. Just wanted to show you how to send the user to a post they've just created and how to create new posts. We're going to move over to the next video to add posts in a slightly different manner. I'll see you there.